Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado, Mike Johnson coming up this hour. Adam Hadwin in about a half an hour. Ricky Fowler back in the winner's circle. Hadwin was right there. Morikawa right there.
See the shirt?
Little TSN golf shirt.
Orange, though. It's kind of orange. It's for Ricky.
You're representing Ricky Fowler?
Representing Ricky today.
Yeah, you're part of the Fowler brigade. What do they call it?
I've always
Ricky's
been there.
Following.
I've always been there with Ricky.
I was not, I have to be honest. I thought Ricky was going to be on the Hooters tour soon. He was really starting to fade. A couple of years ago, it was really ugly.
Dude, I thought he was crazy to not take the live money.
Yeah.
Crazy, because who knew when Ricky was going to win again?
Well, I'm not sure he could have known that. It's a dark place when you're in, it's an individual sport and you're basically an independent contractor and you got to grind, make cuts.
You're your own CEO, eh? In that sport, you are your own CEO. It's in hockey, it's hey, you know when the bird is, you know when practice is, you just show up to all these things. With golf, it's you're orchestrating that whole operation.
Yeah, you got to control it. And he had made a lot of money, and he had been in basically every golf commercial for years. It seemed like it. He was the poster boy for so many different companies. So I'm sure he had made enough bank where he probably could have left the game and not necessarily been concerned about it. But I credit him for grinding and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And he's been in the hunt for a long time here. He's been knocking on the door for the better part of the season.
Oh, he's turned it up, man. Him and sure Jason Day it's been awesome to see both those guys back in the mix. Guys really that have been really forgotten about, and now they're back.
Yeah, really cool reclamation projects and well-known guys, household golf names that, as you said, are back in the winner's circle. So shout out to Ricky Fowler. But Adam Hadwin was right there, being the fifth Canadian to win on tour this year. Been a great year for Canadian golf. You got the ladies' U.S. Open this week at Pebble, too, and Brooke Henderson. I think she's in a group with Rose Zhang and Lydia Ko, that's like a gangbusters three-pack at the U.S. Open at Pebble
Rose,
this week.
Her swing is unbelievable. I don't know if you saw this. We got to try and find a way to get it. She was hitting a tee shot, and the tee went up right into her back pocket.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yes.
I've never seen that. It was outrageous.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah. Very, very cool stuff. All right, so Mike Johnson coming up here in a moment. Again, Adam Hadwin in about a half an hour. The Jays are back in action tonight. Chris Bassett on the mound for the Jays. And the first game of a series has not been kind to the Jays. Obviously, none of the games were kind to them against Boston over the weekend, but you're out of the division now, 7-20 against the AL East. You got a little bit of runway. Chicago's a team you're going to be favored against. You got to win this series. And ideally, you come off a sweep with trying to land a sweep yourself. You got to win game one to do that. You talk about a mental grind. For whatever reason, these Blue Jays just cannot get up for game one of a series.
No, it was like that against the A's as well. They end up winning the series,
yeah,
but
it's
two or
three,
you lose the first game. It'd be nice to get a sweep against the White Sox. And I wonder if it's one of those things where it's not a divisional game and there's maybe a little bit of relief in the clubhouse. Just guys okay, not a divisional team. We're away from our stadium now. Let's get going here.
Yes.
We can kind of breathe a little bit, but they gotta. Kevin Gosman was talking about the intensity that other teams bring to them because they have a target on their back. They need to have that intent. Why not just have that intensity when you're going to the south side of Chicago?
Ideally,
win some games, man.
Go win some games. You're in Chicago this week, and then you're in Detroit over the weekend, another team that's not very good. This is a chance to, I think you got to be thinking 4-2, 5-1 here, and then really start kicking off. Now you're into July, then you get the All-Star break. 45-40, that's what they've done before. But that's exactly where they were a year ago.
Yeah, and this is the thing with this team. They can get hot for 3 weeks. They can get hot for a month and put it together, and it's you do yourself a lot of favors. Now, all of a sudden, you're not 2 games back of a wild card. You're in the driver's seat.
Well, you look at the wild card situation where Mike Trout placed on the IL again. It sounds like the injury he suffers from is going to take between 4 and 8 weeks to recover.
The hook of Hamate.
Yes. So here we go with the Angels, right? It happens every single year. They fade. Ohtani's going to be a unicorn that might win the Cy Young, might win the MVP. Well, he will win the MVP.
Yes.
Likely won't win the Cy Young, but his numbers on the mound and at the plate are going to be staggering. The guy's just an incredible athlete. But Trout gets injured a lot. Here it is. It's the annual event. Trout's on the IL, and I think the Angels are going to fade. Like I said, I think Houston now is starting to take off. They're going to make it. Baltimore likely makes it. You're probably talking about a 3-month grind between the Jays and the Yankees. That's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Jays and Yankees, who's going to get in? Baltimore may come back to the pack.
Sox are 2 games back. Like I don't
think Boston's got enough. I know they just swept the Jays, but I don't think they have enough. I don't think they're deep enough.
And they weren't supposed to. Let's be honest. Their expectations compared to the Blue Jays' expectations is not even close.
Not even close. So it's on the Jays. Keep grinding here with the Yankees. They're going to add by the end of the month. They have to. And because of the situation, I think it's mandatory that the Jays do that. Like, continue to add to what you have. And you're in a window here. We mentioned what Gosman said, which I think is a ludicrous statement, but still, they have high expectations and they have talent, but they need to improve this team.
They're in the
octagon. I think he knows that.
They're in the octagon. They're in a steel cage match with the Yankees the rest of the way, just like I think you should be in a steel cage match with MJ.
No.
Just like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg, we should start getting odds on what it would be like mixed martial arts in the octagon, you versus MJ.
You really want to? Why would you want to see that? Why would you possibly want to see 2 friends doing that to each other? Why? Because we disagree on an Austin Matthews contract?
No, man.
Is that what you're telling me, Frank?
Maybe people want to see it. Maybe people want to see it.
Maybe they do. Here's Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What's up, Johnny?
What's going on, friend? Hazy.
Yeah.
Listen, nobody wants this, least of all me, wants to see us fighting in any capacity. 2 middle-aged men rolling around who can't move, who can't bend over and touch their toes. What are we talking about?
I know.
That's not going to be good for anyone. But it is funny. Like, you and I, you're a passionate, articulate, smart sports fan.
Yes. Thank you, Johnny.
Host. I'm a former player.
Yes.
We don't see things the same. Doesn't mean we don't like each other.
No.
We don't always agree about things. It's amazing how many people are like, oh, you and Hayes got heated. I'm like, I guess we just had a conversation.
I know.
Good.
I know.
People think like, you guys need to get cooled down after that. I'm like, no, we didn't need to cool down. It's totally fine.
I know. It is hilarious. We do this all the time. And actually, when you get to the Matthews thing, when you talk about like the dividends, it's really not that much between what maybe one person might think he could get or should get and what another person might think. Like, no one's suggesting he's taking anything under the highest contract in the league right now. Like, clearly exactly. Like, he's getting the highest salary cap in the league. The question becomes how many years, the term, what kind of ripple effect it has. But it's going to happen. Like, we're all aware of that. I think both sides have probably concluded that. The question is more now, and I think the more prevalent one is Willie and what ends up happening. And I'm curious, where you stand on that, Johnny, because there was so much focus on July 1. Well, now it's July 4th, and by all accounts, Nylander's still a Leaf, and, Roma's not burning right now.
No. I think certainly with Austin Matthews, the Leafs feel pretty comfortable and confident they're going to get a 3-year deal done or a 5-year deal done, whatever. And I think for Nylander, because the percentage delta in his ask and their offer is larger. Like, I don't, he won't make as much money, but I think if he sees himself as a $10 million player and the Leafs see him as an $8.5 million, like a 20% swing in the perceived value of the player, that's relatively high. And so that's a little harder to work through. Now, they can afford to do it in a couple of years. Remember, he's still signed for next year. They can have him play into next year, and they probably don't want to because that adds more uncertainty into next summer. But there's no real deadline that they have to get something done. Trey Living may be scarred by Johnny Gaudreau walking after reaching UFA in his final year for nothing. But, they do have a little bit of time to kind of pick away at it. And they probably end up meeting somewhere in the middle around $9 million. And that probably won't be what Nylander quite thinks he's worth, and that's probably a little bit more than the Leafs think he's worth, and that's generally how negotiations go. But once that gets done, when the Leafs are still interesting because they're currently over the cap, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they need to shed some money. They have about $8 million over the cap. Some of that will be Muzzin that will come off eventually. And then the other big one, of course, is the goaltender. They got Samson off the sign and Murray to contend with, and I'm not sure what's going to happen there. So there's lots of tinkering still to be done, and we shouldn't be surprised given that Willie negotiated into the season for a new deal. He didn't sit out. He wouldn't hold out. He was negotiating a contract. And it took him till right to the deadline of the final minute of the final day to do it last time. So we shouldn't be surprised it's going to be a tough, hard negotiation, as any good negotiation should be.
Johnny, I'm going to ask you this because it was posed to me multiple times over the last week. Like, what's your drop dead number for Willie that you're like, I am not going a penny over that. That is it, and we have to move on after that?
How many years?
Well, as many as you could get, I guess.
So if he's going to go 8 years, I'll give him 9.25.
Yeah.
9.5. Yeah.
That's right where I was. Right where I was, because I do think, for me, he's closer to that upper echelon of right wingers than he is to the Fiala kind of Timo Meier group. Like, I just think the upside is there, and his body of work is larger and better than some of those guys. But yeah, like, for me, it's 9.5. Like, I'm not willing to go any higher than that, and I imagine that would or should get it done.
Yeah, probably. It probably would. And it's a big number. And, he's his first 40-goal season and his first, highest point. He's coming off a career year, so it's good timing. He's not produced. Dave Poulin famously said, last 4 years, Mitch Marner 60 more points, but Nylander 20 more goals. And goals matter more in the playoffs. He scores as much as anyone, including Austin Matthews, in the last 4 or 5 years. Like, of all the big four, he carries his weight and then some. He'll look at Mitch Marner, his own teammate, and be like, okay, I should be close to that guy. Maybe not exactly what that guy is, but he's already making 11, and he's not a UFA. He got that as an RFA. I'm signing as a UFA. There should be some premium there. We can understand the case he would make. You don't have to agree with it, but it's not a really complicated case to suggest he deserves that much money. So, and we'll see. And part of the issue is the idea of, just trade him. Give him Meyer's contract. Owen and I have had this conversation. It's Meyer's contract or get out of here. Okay, but get out of here means what? Like, yes, you can use that $8 million and spend it somewhere else, but you're not going to get as good of a player. We've already seen this. Pierre-Luc Dubois, who Nylander is much better than, he didn't return a player of equal caliber to Winnipeg. He had several good pieces, but no one quite as good. So if you trade Willie, you're not going to get anyone quite as good as he is. That's just sort of the nature of the market right now when it comes to high-end players.
Well, it's interesting how, like you referenced it, Johnny, that Trey Living may be a little bit gun-shy because of what happened with Gaudreau. But I hope that kind of anxiety doesn't carry over to the Leafs. And I get the impression like the fan base and even the media is gun-shy too because of past negotiations, not only with Willie but with other players. But I think it's important that the Leafs at some point exude confidence, don't panic. Right? Like, and I think that's what you're suggesting here is that you don't just give them away. You can't just trade them because the guy on July 4th doesn't accept the deal that you want him to accept. If there's a deal that makes sense, fine. Maybe go for it. If there's a deal that you believe improves your team, you should do it anyway, even if he's going to take the contract you want. Right? Yeah. But, everyone references the Pasternak situation in Boston, and I think that's reasonable. Like, I don't get the impression Nylander is going to be the equivalent of Gaudreau, where Gaudreau, I think, left because he wanted to leave. Where Willie, I don't think he wants to leave. I think he just wants a price. And if you can find a way to meet in the middle, I think that would actually go a long way here, where this team needs to kind of piece back their confidence and exude some confidence and put a stake in the ground that, listen, we're the Leafs. People want to be here, and if you want to be here, we'll make it work. And if Willie wants to be here, that's precisely what will happen. And if it's today, a month from now, 6 months from now, so be it.
I like that. I like that a lot, because if you're running any organization, Hazy, you could be the GM. You're the captain again, Hazy. I like it.
Yes.
But you know what? There's somebody who said, like, we're not Calgary. We're not Edmonton. We're not anybody. We're Toronto. And people will hate on Toronto for saying that. But you want to think, we're the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're a good team. We are a high-profile team in a high-profile market. We're going to pay you what you're worth. You will want to stay here. You should want to stay here. And it's not like, there was the go back home sort of thing. I mean, while William Nylander was born in Calgary, I suppose, home does not exist in the NHL for him. Toronto is his home. And I like that idea. Like, yes, it's not everything should be easy. You shouldn't expect your players to bow down and say, please let me play for the Leafs. But the idea of saying we are a good enough organization, team, and everything else that goes along with it, that this is the preferred destination. We're going to pay you fairly. But this is where you're going to want to be. William Nylander or anybody, Max Domi, all of them. I think that's an important mindset to have because it's one that this organization deserves to carry with themselves despite their playoff failures in the most recent years. They should feel like they are one of the best organizations and teams in the league.
With Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst. So Tyler Bertuzzi in, Max Domi in, John Klingberg in, Ryan Reeves in. What do you make of it so far?
So first of all, term is impressive. The fact that they got those guys on one-year deals to keep their flexibility open, huge. I think Bertuzzi at that number is a perfect fit for the top six to go along with the other guys, right? Like if Matthew Nine's going to be up there as one winger, the big four, and the other winger is going to be Tyler Bertuzzi. He can play with good players. He does bring a little that you and I have talked about. It'd be nice if one of the top guys is a little bit different.
Yes.
A little bit. And sometimes that's squirrely. I joke about Darcy Tucker and what made him so good in that role. Like Tyler Bertuzzi has that. He can play, he can score and create, but he's got that edge to his game that maybe some of those other players don't have. Perfect fit, completely appropriate number, 5.5, but 1 year. So you're not committed long term. Max Domi, same sort of thing, smaller number. He can play center wing. He's a middle six guy. He's not good defensively, but he is good offensively. I think the Leafs have gotten away from being a fast, dangerous team as they've drifted more towards a sort of, defensive, gritty group. And Max brings some of that explosiveness back. He can play play in the middle, depending on where you want him to go. He'll be supported and coached up, I think, by this group to be better defensively. So again, perfect number, $3 million in 1 year, absolutely makes a ton of sense. The Klingberg one is fascinating to me. Maybe Frankie's got thoughts on this, but by several metrics, analytical and otherwise, John Klingberg was one of the worst defensemen in the league last year. I mean, really, it was really a really tough year. Now, I will be sympathetic to this. He wanted and expected a big contract to stay in Dallas, and he never got it. And he was turned off emotionally, and people can roll their eyes, but I kind of went through this once myself. And you kind of get turned off by the business of hockey because you didn't get what you think you deserve. And whether you're right or wrong, it's what you believe. And he basically spent the whole year sort of kind of pouting but kind of down on himself for what didn't happen in Dallas. And he got the big 1 year thing in Anaheim, and Anaheim was ridiculously bad on their own end, as was he. If he can bounce back and, he doesn't have to turn into Rod Landway, but be better than he was last year, I don't mind that. You can put him with Jake McCabe, puck mover, defensive guy. You can play Brody and Riley together. That seems to make sense. Then your third pair can be whoever, right? Liljegren and Giordano, Timmins, whatever. It seems like a reasonable risk as long as he doesn't play like last year. If he plays like last year, it would be a disaster. But if he plays better, which he can and has, then it makes sense. And the Revo one we've talked a lot about. On-ice impacts, we can debate. I don't think they're going to be massive. Energy, personality, sort of locker room character leadership stuff. That's not like that's not important. It does matter to some degree, and he'll bring a lot of that. So they're different. I wonder if they're almost fashioning themselves like Florida tried to. Remember when Florida traded Huberdeau? We might not be as good in the regular season, but we are supposed to be tougher to play against in the playoffs. Yeah, and if there's something there for the same sort of mindset, we may not be quite as might get the 110 points we've had in the past, but we'll be better in the playoffs.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going to go. Like, it's hard to give grades. Bryan and I were talking about that. Like, how do you grade their moves? Like, there's still 2 months before guys are showing up to cities for training camp. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So you don't know if they're better. You don't know if they're worse. But they're different, and the Leafs will be different. And just going back to John Klingberg, like, I do have some thoughts on it, and I agree it is fascinating. It's fascinating when someone comes into your organization, and now you get to see, okay, what did they notice about this group from the outside? What did they think was holding this group back? And clearly they valued Bertuzzi, who's, tenacious, Domi, same thing, speed and tenacity. John Klingberg is interesting because he is purely offensive, and at times, the Leafs power play unit in the playoffs has gotten stagnant. And now this is a guy that if you use him correctly, it's hard not to imagine what he looks like next to Matthews and Marner on the first power play unit if he's playing his best. He was not good in Anaheim, but they were awful last year. He didn't have anyone around him. I wonder if they could get the Klingberg that was in Dallas out of this guy.
Yeah, that's the objective. And again, they got stuck. They got stuck against Florida. Yeah, we can talk about their forecheck. Like, the reason the forecheck works against the Panthers is because they couldn't pass the puck out of their own end, right? They had no one to go back and get it, make a play, and get it going the other way. I like the idea of leaning into offense. I'm well on record that Toronto had to focus, yes, on grit and some of that stuff, but they needed to focus on getting back to who they were. It was more offensive. They needed more good players, more puck movers, and Klingberg can be absolutely that if he's on top of his game. They'll probably have to, build him back up a little bit, just sort of confidence-wise and how he feels about himself and how he's playing. But when he's at his best, he's really pretty good with the puck, and that's a delight for the forwards who now, maybe the third line will get to go play in the offensive zone a little bit as well.
With all that being said, and I do agree, I think there's room for some more offense on the blue line. You saw on Saturday that teams were willing to pay a premium price for that big, rugged, kind of mutant defenseman, whether it was Shen going to Nashville at a higher price point than we thought, Carson Soucy going to Seattle, Radko Gudas got like $4 million with term. Like, all these kind of guys were in high demand on Saturday, and that like smooth skating, puck moving guy seemed to get like 1 year, right? Like, do you still think there's some room on the blue line for that kind of presence for the Leafs?
Yeah, 100%. Well, what were the Leafs last year, right? They're a top 10 defensive team. Like, we can talk about, and we talk about Vegas and they're big and their size and try to protect the front. And I get that. But I do think, having another element of that, because if you look at their team, TJ Brody's a smart defender. He's not a, fan, wouldn't say he's a puck moving sort of guy. McCabe, probably the same thing. Gio's not that anymore. Connor Timmins is still a work in progress. Liljegren's trying to be that, but not necessarily so much. It was Morgan Riley and then a big drop-off. So finding the right blend. And if you're asking me who's going to help you more in the playoffs, the very best version of John Klingberg or the best version of Carson Soucy, it's Klingberg. Now, if you're asking me whose worst game is going to be worse, it's probably going to be Klingberg.
Yeah.
And that's the wild card nature of taking him on.
Yeah, the different ends of the spectrum, they're extreme. They are extreme. And I don't think Treliving's done, though, on the defense score, Johnny. I would assume that's – now, like you've mentioned, they're over the cap, so something's got to give here with Murray. I wouldn't be shocked if they found a taker for Muzzin's contract to move on from that. Like, yes, he can go on long-term IR, but that's once the season has officially begun, I believe. So it's a little bit complicated to get to that point. But I think they're probably still in the process of, possibly adding pieces to the back end here. But, I'll credit Treliving because he's obviously come in quick and worked on a vision quick. And I think he's realizing the benefit of having, like, the amount of money, because we talked about that a lot. Like, by all accounts, I think Bertuzzi's contract, isn't he making like $4.9 million in signing bonus or something? Like it's something crazy.
Yeah, it's like league minimum salary-wise, $775, and the rest is bonus.
Right. Like, he's not doing that in Calgary. He's not getting that in Calgary. So I'm curious, what else Treliving, like, what would you be, where do your eyes go next in terms of what you think Treliving could be thinking here?
I think you're right. So I think before you do anything else, though, right, you got to sort out your goaltending. And that means Matt Murray's situation needs some clarity because Samsonov's an RFA. We haven't talked about him. He's the only guy without a contract, right? Nylander's got a contract. Everyone else has been signed.
Yeah.
Matthews has a contract. One guy who does not is your starting goaltender. Now, ideally, if you can trade away Muzzin's contract, because you're right, to get full LTIR value, you need him on the active roster, which means you have to be $5 million below the cap, put Muzzin on, then add a guy who makes $5 million after the fact. They can't do that. They've signed those guys. So it is a bit tricky there. But if you get Muzzin and Murray off the cap, that's over $10 million, right? And they're $8.8 over it now. So that's free up 1.2. You still have to sign Samsonov.
Yeah. Right?
So like they have work to do. They got to shed somebody else to sign someone else. So another version of Luke Shen, like a steady Eddie defender, heavy, that can play a little bit, that you don't have to hide, can play. That would probably be a pretty good thing. But but I don't think that happens until Samsonov. I mean, they got to sort out the finances and sort out Samsonov.
Yeah, it seems that way. All right, Johnny. Well, we'll leave it there. There's been a lot of activity so far. Surely there's going to be more still to come, but always appreciate you finding time for us, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
All right, boys. Enjoy the hot weather. I'm going back to the lake.
Attaboy. Go enjoy yourself. There he is. Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota. And check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. All right, Adam Hadwin coming up. Hadwin has been in the news a lot lately. He was just in a playoff at the Rocket Mortgage. He was in the final group with Taylor Pendrith and Ricky Fowler. Playing outstanding golf all year. And he got crushed on the 18th hole at Oakdale.
Absolutely trucked.
Yes. The most famous tackle, not in Canadian history, but certainly in Canadian golf history, without question.
And there's
not even there isn't even a second period.
It should be one of those heritage moments.
Yes.
The postage stamps.
He owns that. Exclusively his category. The Canadian golfer that got destroyed by a security guard.
And no one ever tracked down the security guard.
I know.
We never heard from him.
Can't find him. Can't get him on the air. We've tried. Can't find him. Don't know who he is.
With the Secret Service now.
Yep. They're protecting his identity, as they probably should. There it is, up on TSN 4. Hadwin all jacked up for his boy Nick Taylor and around the corner and destroyed.
It doesn't even look real, man. It looks like it's something out of a movie.
Well, it wasn't. It happened. And the man it happened to, Adam Hadwin, he will join us next. All right, Keegan Matheson coming up from Chicago in about an hour. Jay Sox tonight, Chris Bassett on the mound. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Our boy Jack Armstrong will join us too in about a half an hour. Get his take on Fred VanVleet. I wonder if Fred's feeling charitable. I hope so. I get a lot of money, Fred.
What, you think he's going to hand Jack some money?
That's what I was wondering. Like do you hook up
what?
Jack? I don't know. Jack was good to Fred, I'm guessing. I don't know.
You get him a watch.
Yeah, hook Jack up with a watch. Come on, Fred.
It can't be a monetary gift.
No, probably not. But just a nice gesture. Here you go, Jack.
You think Nick Taylor got Adam Hadwin a gift for getting tackled?
That's a good question. Does Hadwin blame Taylor at all for getting crushed on 18 at Oakdale? If he misses that putt, Hadwin doesn't get tackled.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring him in here. Canadian pro golfer. He's been a stud on tour all year. Here is Adam Hadwin. You ever look back on that, Adam? Like if Taylor didn't make that putt, you wouldn't have got tackled the way you got tackled.
That's 100% Nick's fault.
Yes.
I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. I mean, if he didn't do something so spectacular and so great for the Canadian game, then I wouldn't have been running out there with champagne. So I think it's all Nick's fault.
Yeah.
How did you have the champagne ready to go? Like, was this pre-planned or was it sitting around? How did you have that?
It was slightly pre-planned, yes. When they went into the playoff, we were all standing there, waiting for him to come up 18 the first time around. And one of the guys from Golf Canada came over and said, "Hey, I've got a few bottles of champagne. Do you guys want to spray him if he wins?" And I had asked Nick's manager if he'd be okay with it first. I didn't want to do anything that Nick might not want. He said, "Yeah, I think it'd be great." So we had planned to, from the very first playoff hole, it was in the works. And then, I mean, there was a whole coordination of having to get them over to 9 once they switched holes, just in case he won over there. And I wasn't sure where it was in that moment. We kind of lost track as the holes kept going, and but it was right there. So when he made that putt, I took a moment to kind of grab it and get everything uncorked and started running over.
So when they went to play 9, I think that was the third hole of the playoff, you didn't bring the champagne with you?
I personally did not carry it, but I think somebody else brought it for us and had it there just in case it ended there. Yeah, so they were prepared for it. Corey and Mike were also supposed to take champagne and spray it as well, but somehow I'm the only one that ended up with it, got tackled. But, story for another day, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. Obviously, there were a lot of supporters there for Fleetwood, too. I think Lowry was there, Rose was there, I think Hatton was there. Like, if Fleetwood had have won, would you have been cool if they took the champagne?
We never discussed that.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess, celebrate their boy winning. it would have been kind of awkward for us to use it if that had happened. But yeah, I would have been cool with it.
Okay.
Well, Adam, it seems like all you guys, the Canadian players on tour, are really tight, very supportive of each other. Like, where does that all stem from?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with there's such a small group of us, right? Like, you know, a lot of guys on tour represent their hometowns and the areas they're from. And to a certain extent, we do that as well. But a lot of the time, we represent Canada. And so with only 7-8 of us in total from the entire country playing on tour, it's very easy for us to get together during weeks, play practice rounds together, you know, share a few meals, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's probably the biggest reason why, you know, all of us support each other in the events that we're in.
So when you consider what's been going on with Canadian golf and you look at the week you just had in Detroit, and you've been in the running, you know, a bunch this week. There's already been 4 Canadian winners on tour this year. 5 of you are in the top 40 of the FedEx. You know, I don't know if there's like a lead dog. I don't know if there feels like there is like a leader of the pack among, you know, the Canadian golfers right now. But obviously you're focused on yourself and how well you're playing. But how much pride do you take in what seems to be somewhat of a historical season on tour for the Canadians?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly shaping up to be that way. You know, like you mentioned, 4 winners already, I think, ties a record in a year. I don't know how many guys have made tour championship all in one year. It can't be more than a couple. Mm-hmm. And we're getting close to sending, you know, like you said, 3 or 4 of us in there. 5 of us, really. Yeah, it's a very special group to be a part of. Obviously, I want to be the top dog. I think we all do. Got a lot of work to do. Guys are playing well. Corey has kind of been that guy for a few years now, and Nick is having, you know, his standout year. So, yeah, just keep playing hard, and like I said, it's a special group to be a part of, and it's so great to see everybody playing well. You know, it makes it that much more special for us.
With Adam Hadwin, so you were in the playoff yesterday or on Sunday with Ricky and Morikawa, and it was a really strange, you know, week because of the weather, and specifically Sunday, where you're in the final group. You know, you're going off with Ricky, you're going off with Pendrith, and you guys have to go off early. Obviously, it didn't affect you through 18 holes. You played really well, and you get into the playoff. But in general, you know, how difficult can that be to have to adjust your plan? Like, you guys naturally would have gone out, 150, 250 on a Sunday afternoon, and you really had to change things up on Sunday because of the weather.
Yeah, normally it would have been, you know, late afternoon, 6 o'clock finish, whatever TV had allotted. But we had when we finished on Saturday evening, we had an idea of what the tee times would be. They let us know in scoring afterwards. And so obviously the mindset quickly shifts to, you know, instead of having some time that evening to kind of settle down and get ready for the next day, it shifted into, I gotta get ready right away.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think it really affects anything though. I mean, you know, at the same time, it's just golf. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same. It's the same whether you go to 2 o'clock or whether you go at 9 o'clock like we did. Still playing in the final group, still playing with Ricky. Obviously had Pendrith as well. And so you're just looking to play as best as you can. And it was nice to be in contention again. It's been a while. You know, Nick and I, the last time I think that I've been in contention was at Zurich when I partnered with Nick, and we came from so far back that we weren't really technically in contention per se. And so it was nice to be, you know, up there at the top of the leaderboard for much of the event and kind of feel what that feels like again.
with Adam Hadwin. And, as we mentioned, and as everyone knows, you end up in the playoff with Ricky and with Morikawa, like two giants of the game. Morikawa's won a lot early in his career. Ricky, most people are understanding of his journey and how he kind of dipped, and now he's really been hunting for wins for quite some time. And I was somewhat, fascinated by your body language and how you were handling everything coming down the stretch. When Ricky threw that dart on 18, I saw you look back, and I think you gave him a smile and a clap. And I think there's video of you when Ricky hits his putt, you're clapping for him. And I'm curious, like what that experience is like, because obviously you're there to win. You feel like you played really well. But is that just kind of the gentleman's agreement on tour? Like, is there a way to be happy for the other guy, even though, he's the one winning, and in that moment you're on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any sort of, agreement or anything like that. I mean, I can only speak to my actions and what goes through my head. But I felt like I did all I could in that playoff, at that point. Everything was outside of my control. I hit two good shots in there. I hit a good putt that just missed. I hit just a fraction too hard to take the break. And, I became a spectator, really, at that point in time. And, I mean, everybody has known it's what Ricky has gone through, the season that he's having before this win. And so I'm just standing there appreciating good golf. I feel like at the end of the day, regardless of my personal situation on the golf course, I can always appreciate good golf. And for him to stand up there on 18 and slam a wedge in there, get into the playoff, not hit a great drive, hit the closest one of the three of us in there, and make a putt when he needed to, I can appreciate that. I know how hard that is to do. And I was happy for him. He's one of the nicest guys out on tour. He's done a lot for this game. I was thinking even during the round, as we were playing, looking at all the kids, and it was a very pro-Ricky crowd. I 100% wanted to play spoiler. And I don't think the crowd would have been happy about it, but, he pulled it off. He did what he had to do. And again, it was outside of my control, and I was just appreciating the moment. And I thought he deserved to be clapped for. I mean, it was a good moment.
So you, Ricky, and Morikawa are 24 under after 4 rounds of golf. Just curious, like at what point in the week you arrive on the property, at what point do you kind of realize there's going to be a very good opportunity to go very low this week? Or do you not even think about that and you're like, we're just going to play golf and see how it goes?
No, you definitely, the second you stepped on property with all the rain that had gotten prior to the week, you knew that scores were going to be low. The greens can be a little tricky, but only if they're firmer and faster. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the conditions for that this past week. And so you knew you were going to have to make some birdies. The hard part is to get out of your own way and allow that to happen. Knowing you're going to have to make birdies and getting into a mindset of being aggressive, but also, taking things as they come. That's the difficult part on a week like that. And I did a really good job. I was, those first 2 rounds, I think I was like even or 1 over through 6 or 7 holes. And I was, at that point I'd be getting lapped. And so but I did a really good job of staying patient. I think the first round, I was 6 under in the first round. I think I shot 5 under on the backside. So I just stayed patient, just kept hitting shots, waiting for my time, took advantage of opportunities when I had them, and didn't do anything silly to take myself out of it. But it was a good week.
So what's next for you? You got some IKEA shelves to put together that we're going to see on Twitter this week? What's going on next?
You know what? My wife refrains from letting me know about projects until I actually make it home. I'm currently in Moline, Illinois for the John Deere Classic. So one more week on the road of hopefully another good solid play, and then we'll go back home and we'll see what kind of honey-do list she has put together for me.
Oh, it'll be waiting for you. You know that. And then, at some point you got to prep for the Open Championship too, right? Which is a completely different beast.
Yeah.
Isn't it? With the travel and time change and everything, or?
Hopefully. I'm currently still not in the Open. We're getting more information this week. I know they just had final qualifying today over there. And so we're just kind of waiting on an email from the people at the Open to give us a better idea of where I might stand. So I'm hopeful. Like I would have had zero chance of getting to the Open if I hadn't done what I did last week. So
right.
I'm right there. I've told a few people, I think it's going to be one of those scenarios where I'm either the last person in or the second last person in, or potentially the first or second person out. So just awaiting for more details, but hopefully that call comes and I get to go play, because playing golf over there is so different, and it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, go low this week. We're all rooting for you. You do that, that'll take care of a lot of the business, as you know. Congrats on what was a great week in Detroit, and we really appreciate you finding time for us. Thank you for doing this, Adam.
Of course. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
You got it. Adam Hadwin. Good Canadian boy, Adam Hadwin. 35th in the FedEx Cup right now and 54th in the world rankings. And, he played so well. He putts the lights out. And he's been chasing it, man. It's right there, and these Canadians,
it's in a good place, man. Canadian
it's in a really
golf,
good place.
It's never been, as far as I can remember. We've had Mike Weir and we had Stephen A. It's never been this deep, with guys that can contend and win on any given week.
Well, that's it. Hughes has won, Svensson's won, Taylor's won, Connors has won, and Hadwin was right there.
Yeah.
From winning again this week. The idea that there have been legitimately 5 opportunities at a Canadian to win on the PGA Tour is something we've never experienced before.
I love it, man. He's not so different than the common man. He goes out, he plays a round of golf, he comes home, he's got to put together IKEA shelves.
Things you got to do, man.
He's got to do it.
Yep, things you got to do. Although if you go to his PGA Tour page, official money won in his career, $18.9 million. So...
You saying he should spring for something
no.
other than IKEA shelves?
He is the common man with about 18 sheets in the bank.
Right. Yeah.
The common man who has also done pretty well on tour over the years. And that's an example. He's got the one PGA Tour win. I think it was the Valspar back in 16. He's had a number of runner-ups, top 5s, top 10s. But he's just... Adam Hadwin's kind of your tour lifer that is always kind of there. He makes cuts and he chips away and he gets in contention, and you can have a great life doing that, man.
Oh man, he's a great
life.
player.
And he's a great guy.
He's a big Canucks fan, and you know how all these NHL teams do a tournament at the start of the year. He was out there one year.
No way.
We got to see him. He was doing Beat the Pro on a par 3.
That's outstanding.
And he was just throwing darts. It was $150, and he was just
dart.
This pitching. I asked him what do you? He goes, I'm hitting a pitching wedge, just a little sawed-off pitching wedge. And he was just throwing them in there all day, a couple feet.
Yeah, it's crazy how much better these guys are than everyone else.
Yeah,
naturally, that is the same thing in the NBA, the NHL, the NFL.
Yeah, he might have missed the green twice all day. And he was there for 5 hours.
And if he missed, he would have got up and down wherever he missed.
Easily.
Yeah. OverDrive brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We've got Keegan Matheson coming up from Chicago, Jays, Sox tonight, and Jack Armstrong on Fred leaving the Raptors. How did it get to this point? OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. So today, of course, being July 4th down in the States, crisis averted because it looked like the Nathan's hot dog eating competition was going to get canceled due to poor weather.
Saw that.
Yeah, then I guess Joey Chestnut basically said no chance. We're doing this. I'm prepared. It's go time. And they ended up doing it. It was delayed. He ends up eating 62 hot dogs, wins running away. That's his 16th championship performance.
It's called the mustard spelt or something? Like something mustard.
I don't know, but there was no one even close to this, Cap. I find this the most repulsive thing on TV every single year. For me, it is so disgusting. Like, and a lot of it is that I don't like hot dogs. Like, I'm really anti-hot dog. But seeing these guys dunk it in water and just, it is so disgusting.
Can we just go back to something?
Can't do it.
You're anti-hot dog? Like, you have a strong opinion against hot dogs.
I'm really anti-hot dog.
If someone offers you a dog in the summer, do you just tell them, like, get out of my face?
Absolutely not.
I hate you for asking me
Never
that.
not eating it. Yeah, will not eat it. That's the danger of going to a barbecue or going to somebody's house. You know, if that's the only option, we're doing dogs, then I'm screwed.
Will you just stay hungry or will you eat it?
I'd stay hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I understand is a first world problem, but it's just not my thing. Hot dogs, no dice. So that's why that, on top of the fact that, like, it's just such a gluttonous, like, disgusting display. Like, I know it's a competition, but I can't get down with it.
No one is better at their sport than Joey Chestnut.
He does seem
no
one's close to this guy.
Like, Tiger in golf is not even close to Joey Chestnut in hot dogs.
Like, how is this guy going to possibly stop? Like, why would he be worse next year or the year after that? Like, is he going to do this for the next 20 years?
No, at some point there's gonna have to be a decline.
Are they going to ask him to stop? Do you think it'd be a better idea if they started doing it without him?
No,
because then if you're in a competition, it's not a competition with this guy. Chestnut wins it every single year.
It'll be his call.
I think he's got to go. I think for the sake of competition, Chestnut's got to leave. He's got to be excluded from the competition. Because every year, it's just a waste of time. You know he's going to dominate, and he's going to win. Hour 3 coming up. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.